My fiancé kicked me out of my own wedding 48 hours later. He lost everything, and at that moment, no one in that room believed it would end in disaster. The guests whispered with excitement, convinced they were about to witness a perfect ceremony. Soft music played. White flowers lined the aisle. Cameras were ready. Everything looked expensive, curated, flawless. And between us, that illusion was about to shatter. Before we continue, this channel is still growing. If you want more stories like this, subscribe and help it grow. Helena stood at the entrance of the venue, holding her bouquet a little too tightly. Her hands were cold, but she told herself it was just nerves. Weddings did that to people. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. The day she finally felt chosen. She took one step forward. Then she saw Marcelo walking toward her from the altar. Not smiling. Not nervous. Not emotional. His face was stiff, almost offended, like she had already done something unforgivable. Behind him, his mother followed closely, her lips pressed into a thin, knowing smile. The kind of smile that didn't reach the eyes. The kind that says, "I won." The music faltered. Someone coughed. A few guests shifted in their seats. Marcelo raised his hand. "We're not getting married today," he said. The words landed heavy in the air, like something breaking. A murmur spread through the room. Helena felt her chest tighten. "What?" she whispered. Marcelo didn't lower his voice. He wanted everyone to hear. "You lied to me," he said. "You had serious legal issues about your property. I just found out this morning." Helena shook her head immediately. "That's not true. There are no issues." "I don't understand." "I said enough," he cut her off, cold and sharp. "I won't marry someone who hides lawsuits and financial risks. Especially not someone who could ruin my family's name." Then he turned slightly and nodded toward two men standing near the door. "Please escort her out." For a second, Helena thought she had misheard. That this was some cruel misunderstanding that would clear itself up if she could just speak. But the men were already walking toward her. One of them gently reached for her arm. She looked around the room. At the guests. At people she had hugged that morning. People who had smiled at her, told her she looked beautiful. No one moved. Marcelo's mother leaned forward, her voice low but perfectly audible. "Let's not make this more embarrassing than it already is." That was when something inside Helena broke. She was guided down the aisle she was supposed to walk with pride. Her heels echoed against the floor. Her face burned. She could feel eyes on her back. Judgment. Curiosity. Pity. The doors closed behind her with a hollow sound. Outside, the air felt colder than it should have. Her phone buzzed in her hand. Messages already coming in. Confusion. Questions. Gossip starting to grow teeth. And honestly, I don't know how she stayed on her feet. Because 2 days later, it would be Marcelo who couldn't stand. But to understand how she ended up being thrown out of her own wedding like a criminal, we need to go back. 2 years earlier, Helena lived a quiet, predictable life. She worked long hours at a small print shop downtown. Nothing glamorous. Just honest work. Her clothes were simple. Her routine steady. She didn't dream big because she had been taught that stability was enough. The most valuable thing she owned wasn't flashy. It was an old building her father had left her. A narrow, aging structure with creaky stairs and peeling paint. It needed care. Repairs. Love. To Helena, it wasn't an investment. It was memory. Safety. Proof that she had roots. Marcelo entered her life, like an answer to a question she hadn't realized she was asking. He was confident. Polished. Calm in a way that made her feel small but protected at the same time. He said things like, "You don't have to worry so much anymore." And, "Let me handle this. You're not good with these things." At first, it felt like support. His mother, however, never bothered pretending. She would look at Helena with polite interest, then follow with comments wrapped in sugar. "You're very sweet," she'd say. "Just a little unrefined. But marriage fixes that. Or worse. My son is used to a certain level of comfort. You'll need to adapt." Helena laughed it off. Told herself she was being sensitive. Between us, that's usually how it starts. When the engagement happened, everything accelerated. Conversations shifted from flowers and menus to paperwork and assets. Marcelo and his mother suddenly cared a lot about Helena's building. There must be debts, his mother insisted one evening. Old properties always have problems. There aren't, Helena replied. My father was careful. Marcelo sighed, impatient. You really don't understand how these things work. We just want to protect ourselves. They brought documents. Drafts. Things that required signatures. Always framed as harmless. Just a formality. Helena read every page. Slowly. Carefully. And every time, something felt off. So she refused. That's when the tone changed. Marcelo became distant. Critical. Easily annoyed. You make everything harder than it needs to be, he told her once. Marriage is about trust. She wondered when trust started to sound like pressure. The week before the wedding was unbearable. Marcelo disappeared for hours. His mother whispered on the phone, stopping abruptly when Helena entered the room. Meetings happened without her. Decisions were made around her. She told herself it was stress. Little did she know it was strategy. Helena stayed outside
that wedding
the venue
day
long
wasn't
after
the
the
beginning
last
of her
car
downfall.
left.
It was the moment
the
the
wrong
colder,
people
but
believed
she barely
had no
noticed.
power. Her body felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. The laughter, the music, the promises that had filled that place just hours earlier now felt unreal, like a dream she had been pushed out of without warning. Eventually, a staff member approached her carefully, holding a small glass of water. I'm so sorry, the woman whispered, placing it beside her and walking away quickly, as if the shame of the moment might cling to her. Helena stood up slowly. Her legs trembled. Her dress felt heavier with every step, the fabric dragging softly against the floor as she walked toward the exit alone. No one stopped her. No one followed her. Outside, the air hit her like a wall. She reached for her phone, her fingers stiff, and called Marcelo. Straight to voicemail. She tried again. And again. Nothing. Her phone buzzed. A message finally appeared on the screen, but it wasn't from him. It was from his mother. Don't come back to the apartment tonight. We'll talk later. That was all. No explanation. No concern. Just a decision already made. Helena stared at the message, her heart pounding louder with every second. The apartment wasn't some shared space Marcelo had provided for her. It was hers. She had bought it years before meeting him. She had worked 2 jobs, saved every spare dollar, and signed the papers alone. Marcelo had moved in later. That detail mattered. Or at least it should have. When she arrived at the building, the lights in the apartment were on. She took a breath, walked up to the door, and slid her key into the lock. It didn't turn. She tried again. Slower this time. Nothing. Her chest tightened. She knocked. Once. Then harder. Inside, she could hear voices. Calm voices. Marcelo's voice. His mother's voice. They were talking as if it were an ordinary evening, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Helena knocked again. The door opened just a few inches. Marcelo stood there, blocking the entrance. You shouldn't be here, he said quietly. Helena stared at him, trying to recognize the man she had planned to marry that morning. This is my home, she said. Marcelo exhaled slowly, like she was being unreasonable. We need space, he replied. Today was a lot. A lot. Helena repeated. You threw me out of my wedding. You embarrassed me, he said, his voice sharper now. In front of everyone. Something in Helena snapped. She laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because the absurdity of the moment was too much to hold inside. I embarrassed you, she asked. You humiliated me. Marcelo's mother appeared behind him, her expression calm, controlled, almost bored. This isn't the time, she said. You're emotional. I want to come inside, Helena replied. We'll talk like adults. Marcelo shook his head. My mother thinks it's best if you stay somewhere else tonight. Your mother? Helena echoed. Marcelo leaned closer, lowering his voice. You signed the papers, he said. You just didn't read them carefully. Her stomach dropped. What papers? She asked. Marcelo didn't answer. He simply stepped back and closed the door. The click of the lock echoed louder than the shouting had earlier that day. Helena stood there for a long time, staring at the door, waiting for it to open again. It didn't. That night, she slept in her car, still wearing her wedding dress. She reclined the seat as far as it would go, wrapped her arms around herself, and stared at the dark windshield. Every sound made her flinch. Every passing car felt like a reminder of how exposed she was. Her mind replayed the last few months on a loop. The rushed documents. The way Marcelo's mother insisted on simplifying things. The moments she had been told, it's just a formality. She had trusted them. By morning, her anger had replaced her shock. Helena drove straight to the one person Marcelo and his mother would never expect her to contact. Her father's old lawyer. The office smelled like paper and coffee, unchanged by time. When Helena walked in, pale and exhausted, the elderly man behind the desk looked up and froze. "Helena," he said softly. "What happened?" She sat down and told him everything. The wedding. The lockout. The papers. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he leaned back slowly and removed his glasses. "Do you remember what you signed?" he asked. "No," Helena admitted. "They rushed me." Marcelo said it was about merging finances after the wedding. The lawyer nodded grimly. "I need to see those documents." That afternoon, Helena returned to her car, her hands shaking with a mixture of fear and determination. She didn't know what she had lost yet, only that something was very wrong. What she didn't realize was that this was no longer just about a broken engagement. It was about control. And someone had underestimated her. Helena left the lawyer's office with a tight knot in her chest. The afternoon sun felt too bright, too normal, for what she had just heard. People walked past her on the sidewalk, laughing, checking their phones, living lives untouched by betrayal. She wanted to stop one of them and ask how the world could keep moving when hers had just cracked open. She sat in her car for a long time before turning the engine on. The lawyer's words echoed in her head. "You didn't lose ownership overnight. But someone tried very hard to make it look that way." That sentence mattered. Because if someone had tried, it meant someone had planned. Back in the car, Helena opened her email and searched for the documents Marcelo had sent her in the weeks before the wedding. There were dozens. Attachments she had barely glanced at. PDFs with long titles and friendly messages attached. Just routine stuff. Nothing to worry about. This will make things easier after the wedding. At the time, she had believed him. Now, she downloaded every single file and forwarded them to the lawyer. That evening, her phone rang. Marcelo. She hesitated before answering. "Hello," she said, keeping her voice steady. "Where are you?" he asked, sounding annoyed, not concerned. "That's funny," Helena replied. "I was going to ask you the same thing. Since I don't have a home anymore." There was a pause. "You're being dramatic," Marcelo said. "We're just sorting things out." "Sorting what out?" she asked. "My apartment?" Another pause. Longer this time. "My mother thinks it's best if things are restructured," he said carefully. "Restructured how?" Marcelo sighed. "Helena, you're not thinking clearly. The wedding didn't go as planned. Emotions are high. Let's just give this some time." Time. That word again. Time was what he wanted. Time was what she no longer intended to give. The next morning, Helena returned to the lawyer's office. He had printed the documents. All of them. They sat across from each other as he slid the papers across the desk, one by one. "Here," he said, tapping a page. "This is the problem." Helena leaned forward. It was a power of attorney document. Limited. Temporary. That's how it had been described to her. But in the fine print, buried beneath technical language, was a clause granting Marcelo authority over property-related decisions in the event of marriage, including temporary occupancy rights. "And this?" Helena asked, her voice barely audible. "That's an addendum," the lawyer said. "It references a future marital agreement. One that was never signed, but was implied." "Implied," she repeated. He nodded grimly. "They tried to create a legal gray area. Enough confusion to intimidate you into backing down." Helena felt a wave of nausea. "So they planned this before the wedding," she said. "Yes," the lawyer replied. "This wasn't emotional. It was strategic." That word hit harder than any insult. Strategic. Marcelo hadn't exploded at the wedding because he lost control. He had exploded because it was time. That afternoon, Helena drove past her building. She didn't stop. She didn't go in. But she saw the lights on again. Her lights. A few days later, the lawyer called her. "I need you to come in," he said. "There's something else." When Helena arrived, a second man was sitting in the office. Younger. Sharp-eyed. Silent. "This is Daniel," the lawyer explained. "He specializes in financial and property disputes." Daniel nodded once. "We ran a background check," he said. "On Marcelo." Helena's heart raced. "And?" she asked. Daniel slid a thin folder across the desk. Marcelo had been involved in 2 previous property disputes, both with former partners. Both resolved quietly. Both involving sudden breakups and claims of mutual agreements. Helena's hands shook as she flipped through the pages. "I wasn't the first," she whispered. "No," Daniel said. "But you're the first who didn't leave quietly." That night, Helena finally cried. Not in her car. Not in public. But alone, in a small hotel room she had paid for herself. She cried for the wedding that never really existed. For the man she thought she loved. For the version of herself who trusted too easily. And when the tears stopped, something else took their place. Resolve. The next morning, she sent Marcelo a message. "I want my things." The reply came quickly. "We'll arrange something." "No," Helena typed back. "I'm coming today." When she arrived at the apartment with Daniel, the door was open. Marcelo's mother stood inside, arms crossed, her expression tight. "This is unnecessary," she said coldly. Helena looked around. Her furniture had been moved. Her photos were gone. "This is my home," Helena said calmly. "And this ends today." Marcelo appeared from the bedroom, his face pale. "You're making a mistake," he said. "No," Helena replied. "I made one already. I won't repeat it." Daniel stepped forward. "Any further interference will be documented," he said. And challenged. For the first time since the wedding, Marcelo looked unsure. That was when Helena understood something crucial. They had counted on her silence. And she was done being quiet. The shift didn't happen all at once. It started quietly. Too quietly. For the first time since the wedding, Helena stopped reacting and started observing. And the moment she did that, patterns began to emerge. Marcelo stopped calling. His mother, who had once spoken with absolute authority, suddenly limited her messages to short, carefully worded texts. Nothing direct. Nothing threatening. Just enough to sound reasonable if anyone else ever read them. Helena recognized the change immediately. They were no longer confident. They were cautious. Daniel explained it plainly during one of their meetings. They thought fear would be enough, he said. When that didn't work, they switched to damage control. Helena sat across from him, hands folded tightly, listening. "People who plan like this don't improvise well when the script changes," Daniel continued. "And you've changed the script." Within days, official letters were sent. Formal notices. Requests for documentation. Questions Marcelo had never expected to answer. He responded slowly. Late. Sometimes not at all. That was when the pressure began to show. Helena heard about it from someone she didn't expect. A mutual acquaintance. "I ran into Marcelo yesterday," the woman said hesitantly over the phone. He looked stressed. Helena didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. She already knew why. The apartment situation escalated first. Marcelo's attempt to claim temporary rights collapsed under scrutiny. The language he had relied on was vague, intentionally so. But vagueness works both ways. What had once intimidated Helena now worked against him. A formal notice arrived 2 weeks later. Marcelo was required to vacate the apartment. Immediately. Helena read the letter twice, her hands trembling not with fear this time, but with something sharper. Relief mixed with disbelief. She went back to the apartment alone. For the first time since the wedding. The place felt wrong. Not damaged. Not destroyed. Just altered. Her books had been stacked carelessly. The couch cushions rearranged. The air smelled unfamiliar. She stood in the living room and let herself feel it. The anger. The grief. The clarity. She didn't cry. Instead, she opened the windows. Then she changed the locks. Marcelo tried to fight it. Of course he did. He claimed misunderstandings, emotional distress, mutual intent. But the evidence was no longer on his side. And then something else surfaced. A detail Daniel had been waiting for. The previous disputes. Those quiet resolutions from Marcelo's past hadn't been as clean as they looked. One of the women had spoken up. Not publicly. Not yet. But she spoke to a lawyer. And then another woman did the same. Suddenly, Marcelo wasn't just dealing with Helena. He was dealing with a pattern. That changed everything. Helena was advised to stay silent. No posts. No statements. No explanations. Let the facts speak. And they did. Marcelo's workplace requested clarification. Then documentation. Then meetings. Helena never asked for revenge. She didn't need to. Marcelo was unraveling on his own. The final confrontation came unexpectedly. He showed up at the apartment. Unannounced. Helena didn't open the door at first. She watched him through the peephole. He looked smaller somehow. Less sure. When she did open it, she kept the chain on. "We need to talk," he said. "We already are," Helena replied calmly. "I didn't think it would go this far," Marcelo said, his voice tight. Helena studied him for a long moment. "You planned everything," she said. "You just didn't plan for resistance." He swallowed. "My mother thought." Helena raised her hand. "No," she interrupted. "This stops being about your mother when you sign your name." Silence stretched between them. "I loved you," Marcelo said finally. Helena nodded once. "I know," she said. "Just not enough to be honest." He left shortly after. No shouting. No drama. Just defeat. Weeks later, the final notice arrived. The engagement was officially dissolved. All claims withdrawn. Marcelo's legal representation stepped back. Helena sat at her kitchen table, the paper resting beneath her hands, and felt the weight of it settle. Not triumph. Closure. She thought about the woman she had been the morning of the wedding. Hopeful. Trusting. Certain of the future. That woman hadn't been foolish. She had been human. And the woman sitting there now? She was stronger. Not because she had won, but because she had survived something designed to break her. And she hadn't stayed broken. The quiet that followed surprised Helena more than the chaos had. There were no dramatic headlines. No public apologies. No grand speeches. Just silence. And for the first time in weeks, that silence felt safe. Helena settled back into her apartment slowly. She didn't rush to make it feel like home again. Instead, she let it remain what it was for a while, a place she had reclaimed, not yet healed. Every morning, she woke up and reminded herself of one simple truth. She had not been discarded. She had escaped. Marcelo didn't disappear completely. He lingered at the edges of her life, like a shadow that didn't quite know where to go now. One final message arrived late one night. "I never meant to hurt you." Helena stared at the screen for a long time before locking her phone and placing it face down on the table. Intent, she had learned, mattered far less than outcome. Weeks later, Daniel called her with an update. Marcelo's name had surfaced again. Another dispute. Another complaint. Another woman who had decided not to stay quiet. Helena felt something then, not satisfaction, not revenge. Relief. Because it meant the story wasn't just hers. She hadn't imagined it. She hadn't exaggerated it. She hadn't been too emotional. She had seen the truth first. The final paperwork arrived on a calm afternoon. Helena signed it alone at her kitchen table, sunlight spilling across the wood. No witnesses. No pressure. No one rushing her. When she finished, she sat back and let out a breath she felt she had been holding for years. The wedding photos were still stored on a flash drive in a drawer. One evening, she finally took it out. She didn't open the files. She deleted them. Not in anger. Not in grief. But with certainty. The woman in those photos had believed love required trust without boundaries. The woman deleting them had learned otherwise. Life didn't transform overnight after that. It grew. Slowly. Quietly. Helena changed small things first. She repainted the bedroom. She donated the wedding dress. She rearranged the furniture so nothing looked the way it had before. Then she changed bigger things. She stopped apologizing for asking questions. She stopped explaining her instincts away. She stopped mistaking discomfort for drama. Months later, she attended a wedding. Not as a bride, as a guest. She watched the couple exchange vows, listened to the promises, felt the familiar ache, and realized something unexpected. She wasn't jealous. She was grateful. Because she knew now what those words were worth when spoken without honesty. Someone asked her once, carefully, "Do you regret what happened?" Helena thought about the night in her car. The locked door. The humiliation. Then she shook her head. "I regret who I was before," she said softly. "Not what happened to me. What happened had revealed the truth. And the truth, painful as it was, had set her free. She didn't rebuild her life to prove anyone wrong. She rebuilt it because it was hers. And this time, no one could take it from her." Final moral. Sometimes, the worst betrayal isn't being abandoned. It's being chosen for manipulation instead of love. But when someone tries to strip you of your place, your voice, your security, and you refuse to disappear, that's not loss. That's the moment you reclaim yourself. If you want more wedding drama, family secrets, and stories that make you whisper, "No way," hit subscribe. Bridal Confessions has many more secrets to tell.